Caitlin Clark went to Madison Square Garden for an NBA game and somehow managed to steal the spotlight without taking a single shot. No logo threes, no 30-foot daggers, just a microphone, a TV camera, and a now viral joke about her height standing next to NBA legends. The Indiana Fever star added a completely new line to her resume, and it had nothing to do with her WNBA stat sheet. Clark made her national broadcasting debut on NBC, and the way it played out says a lot about where her career and women's basketball is headed. On Sunday, Clark joined NBC's pregame coverage for one of the biggest NBA matchups of the season, the New York Knicks versus the Los Angeles Lakers at Madison Square Garden. This wasn't a cameo tucked into a secondary broadcast. This was the main stage in one of basketball's most iconic arenas on a major network. She wasn't alone either. Clark was on set with Reggie Miller, future Hall of Famer Carmelo Anthony, and veteran host Maria Taylor. That's a serious lineup. NBC didn't slot her in as a novelty guest from the WNBA. They positioned her alongside established NBA voices and gave her a chair at the same table. For Clark, it was the first appearance in her new role as a special contributor for NBC's NBA coverage. For NBC, it was a clear statement. Caitlin Clark isn't just a WNBA attraction. She's a crossover star who can help draw in a broader basketball audience. But what really grabbed the internet wasn't a bold prediction or some fiery hot take. It was her making fun of her own height. Standing between 6'7" Reggie Miller and 6'7" Carmelo Anthony, Clark looked noticeably smaller on the broadcast. Fans pointed it out in real time. Screenshots started flying around social media, and Clark leaned right into it. After the show, she jumped on X and joked that next time she'd need stilts. That one line blew up. Fans loved it. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't forced, and it showed exactly why brands and networks are so eager to work with her. She knows how to disarm a situation, laugh at herself, and turn an awkward visual into something everyone can relate to. That post ended up overshadowing the very solid job she did on air. People were sharing the clip of her on the set, but the caption was almost always about the stilts line. It turned what could have been just another debut segment into a moment people actually remembered and talked about. At the same time, NBC's decision to use Clark in that spot is part of a bigger shift. More and more elite athletes aren't waiting till retirement to move into media. They're doing it in parallel with their careers. You see NFL players on pre-game panels during bye weeks, active NBA players jumping behind the mic for special events, and now one of the biggest names in the WNBA dipping into the NBA broadcasting space. For Clark, it makes perfect sense. Her game already draws in viewers, but her personality is a massive part of the package. She's articulate, comfortable in front of cameras, and used to being at the center of attention from her Iowa days on. Getting reps in the media now, while she's still in the early stages of her pro career, only amplifies her long-term value. And it wasn't just the height joke that stood out during that broadcast. NBC made sure to lean into the Indiana connection. Reggie Miller, one of the greatest shooters of all time and the face of the Indiana Pacers for years, shared a fun line that immediately made news. He looked at Clark, then at the camera, and said there's a new shooter from Indiana. Then he went a step further and ranked himself behind her and Pacers star Tyrese Halliburton, joking that he's now only the third best shooter in the state. For a Hall of Famer to put a current WNBA guard in that kind of conversation, even jokingly, it's not something you would have seen a decade ago. It was playful, but it carried a real message. Caitlin Clark has changed the way people talk about women's basketball. Clark handled it the way she usually does, with a smile and a quick, grounded response. She said they'd probably have to check with Tyrese on that ranking, because she wasn't sure he would agree. It was respectful, light, and showed the balance she always keeps, confident but not reckless with praise or self-hype. That little exchange captured exactly what NBC was trying to sell: Hall of Fame legacy meeting the next generation, the old sharpshooter who terrorized the Garden in the 90s, jokingly passing the torch to a new kind of long-range assassin from the same state. If you followed Clark since college, this moment feels like a natural extension of everything she's been building. At Iowa, she became must-see TV. It wasn't just that she put up huge scoring numbers, it was how she did it. Deep threes, impossible passes, big shots under pressure. Her NCAA tournament runs pulled record audiences. Neutral fans tuned in just to see what absurd things she'd do next. That momentum followed her straight into the pros. She went #1 overall in the 2024 WNBA draft to the Indiana Fever, walked into a franchise that had been struggling, and instantly turned them into one of the league's biggest draws.
On the floor, she backed up the hype. She averaged 19.2 points and 8.4 assists as a rookie, launching nearly 9 threes a game and still making plays for teammates. That combination, high-volume scoring and elite playmaking, is rare in any league, especially for a player just out of college. The awards reflected that impact. She was named Rookie of the Year. She became a 2-time WNBA All-Star faster than many expected, and her presence on national broadcasts routinely spiked ratings. No matter how you feel about the constant coverage, the numbers don't lie. When Caitlin Clark plays, more people watch. That's exactly why NBC wants her on their NBA product. She brings the WNBA audience with her, introduces casual NBA fans to a name they've probably heard even if they haven't watched a Fever game, and helps bridge the gap between the men's and women's sides of the sport. Her role isn't a one-off stunt either. NBC has already lined up her next appearance. She's scheduled to return as a special contributor on March 29th when the network covers the Knicks again, this time on the road against the Oklahoma City Thunder at Paycom Center. That matchup is another smart choice. You've got a rising small-market star in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a young, exciting Thunder team, the Knicks brand, and then Clark on the pregame desk tying it all together. If Sunday's debut is any indication, viewers will be tuning in not just to hear her break down the game, but to see what kind of unscripted moment she brings this time. The timing of all this is especially interesting when you consider where the WNBA is. The league is in a period of negotiation and transition, working through CBA talks and big-picture questions about salary structure, schedule, and long-term growth. At the same time, interest around women's basketball is higher than it's ever been, largely because of Clark and a wave of other talents. Putting Clark on a major NBA broadcast is a signal from NBC that they're not treating WNBA players as a niche story anymore. She's being plugged directly into one of their biggest basketball platforms. That kind of cross-promotion can only help the women's game, because it normalizes seeing WNBA stars as equal parts of the wider basketball conversation. It also gives young players, especially girls who are just now falling in love with the sport, a bigger spectrum of what a career in basketball can look like. You don't just have to be a scorer or a passer. You can be a star, an ambassador, a media presence, and the face of multiple brands at once. For Clark personally, it's another leverage point. She's already a key figure for the WNBA, a centerpiece for the Indiana Fever, and a huge part of Nike's future in basketball. Now she's also a recurring face on NBC's NBA coverage. That's a rare trifecta, and it sets her up, years from now, to transition smoothly into full-time broadcasting if she ever wants to, with a track record and audience already built. The fun part is that right now, all of this is still a side project. Her primary job is still getting buckets and creating opportunities in the WNBA. The media work is supplemental, but watching how comfortable she looked on that NBC set, how quickly her off-court personality turned a small moment into a viral talking point, you can see exactly why networks are so eager to get her in the chair. She's relatable enough to crack jokes about her own height next to retired NBA stars. She's respected enough that those same stars are calling her the new shooter from Indiana. And she's accomplished enough that her presence on a pregame show doesn't feel like a stunt, it feels earned. So when you put it all together, Sunday night at Madison Square Garden wasn't just a fun detour for Caitlin Clark, it was a preview of what networks think she can become, a preview of how much crossover power a WNBA star can have in the NBA media space, and a preview of what the next phase of her influence might look like even while she's still in the middle of building her on-court legacy. The next big test comes March 29th in Oklahoma City. She'll be back on NBC, back with the Knicks involved, and back in front of a national audience that's now expecting both insight and that signature low-key humor. The question for you is this: do you see Caitlin Clark eventually becoming one of the defining media voices in basketball when her playing days are done? Or should she focus strictly on her WNBA career for now and let the media side stay secondary? Drop your thoughts below and let's see how you feel about this next chapter in her rise.